So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Lunar and Planetary Institute's Professional Development Seminar Series. Thank you so much for being here. So this is a pretty new series of online and some in-person programs that are going to feature webinars, workshops that are aimed at offering guidance on personal and career development topics for the planetary science, but also broader academic community. My name is Grace Bodwin. I'm a Senior Science Engagement Specialist at the Lunar and Planetary Institute. It's my pleasure to be hosting today's seminar. We're going to be recording, and the recording will be posted on LPI's webpage and on our YouTube channel in the next few days. So even though we're recording, we can edit the video if there are any discussions like toward the end about topics that might be sensitive. We encourage you to please share your thoughts as they come up, and don't worry, nothing personal will be saved in the recording. So all of our programs are free and they're open to all. And as we build out this program, your feedback is really critical to us. So there's also going to be a survey when you leave the Zoom session at the end. And if you have the time, sharing your input would really help me to improve future offerings. And if you have any questions during today's webinar, you're not able to come off of mute or show your camera, but please enter your thoughts into the chat. You're going to be asked to interact with us in that way. And also, please, if you have any questions, put them into the Q&A. We're going to do questions at the end. So if they're in the Q&A, we'll be able to find your questions a lot easier. Okay, so I do have two quick poll questions. Excuse me. I'm going to launch right now. So you'll need to scroll down to see both of these questions. The first one is single choice. Just asking you to please describe your career stage. And then the second question, this does not cover everything, but in thinking about some of the future topics that we might address in professional development seminars, which of these areas of development are most relevant to your career and professional goals? Okay, thanks everyone for participating. I'm going to close the poll in just a few more seconds. All right, so we're going to end that now. Thank you for your answers. I'm going to be excited to look at those later. And right now, I'm really excited to introduce our awesome speaker. We're joined by Dr. David Trang, who's a planetary scientist at the Space Science Institute. His research focuses on understanding surface processes and composition of airless rocky bodies in the solar system. He received his PhD in geology and geophysics from the University of Hawaii and his master's in counseling psychology. David is a pre-licensed mental health counselor and works as an academic coach at the Hawaii Pacific University, where he helps under-resourced students transition into college and improve their life skills and academic skills, empowering them to succeed in whatever their future endeavors might be. So we're really excited to be joined by David, who has a foot in both the world of counseling and psychology, as well as planetary and natural science. So I'm going to hand it over to you now, David. And I will be here to help if you need anything.
Thank you. We're going to share my screen to the presentation. All right. Can everyone see that? Is everyone good?
Looks great.
Okay, awesome. So yeah, today I'm going to talk about the mental health in planetary science. I know there's now a lot of people who aren't in planetary science. That's okay. It's just that we're going to do a little bit more focus just because that's the field that I'm most familiar with. But yeah, so today we're going to talk about creating an environment of appreciation. This is only one of many steps improving mental health in the field. So I'm very excited to finally do a workshop and start making these small incremental improvements. So a little bit about me, and I will warn you guys, I've added a lot of puppy pictures in these slides. If you guys want to know, the real reason is because psychology doesn't exactly have the most prettiest ideas for figures. I want to break up the slides so it's not just so wordy. So I try to put in a lot of puppies, something that will, make us feel good. But anyways, yes, I am a planetary scientist. So I am part of the field. I love being part of this field. That's part of the reason why I'm still here, even though I have a counseling psychology background. I want to help this community. I know what it feels like with all the struggles. So I want to make this community a lot better. You guys are pretty much my family. So anyways, you're going to hear a little bit more about why I want to help and all these things. But yeah, I am a planetary scientist. I'm still doing work. That's why I'm with Space Science Institute. Still interested in surface processes and composition, especially in the inner solar system. Like Grace said, I am a pre-licensed mental health counselor. That's because I just graduated within the last 2 years, so I'm working on getting my hours towards licensure. So I do have a specialization in clinical mental health counseling. So something I'm absolutely interested in. I absolutely love it. I probably read more textbooks on counseling than I have in planetary science. And I also currently work at Hawaii Pacific University. A lot of students that we have are under-resourced, so they're coming in with backgrounds where it was tough for their families to help them out, do homework. So a lot of them tend to not have the highest, best grades. So we're here to help them, give them that support, right? It's the whole equity part of diversity, equity, inclusion. So we're here to support them, build new behavior and skills to succeed in college. So kind of give them something that they weren't able to be given in high school and before. So that's a little bit about me, but we're going to jump right into this presentation and this workshop. Again, I just want to say you don't have to be a planetary scientist to be here. You can be, as long as you're a part of this community, an academic community, you're welcome here. This is going to be every example I give is going to be more relevant towards the academic side. And one thing I want to kind of note is the big picture goal is to kind of reform the culture of academia. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that. So we want to change not just planetary science. We want to change all of academia because the culture, it does have issues. And right now I'm kind of using planetary science as like this is how we can make it better, right? We're the proof of concept. And then the other thing is, so there is going to be some exercises. There is going to be some homework. So please have either a paper, pen, or a pencil ready, or a word processor. It depends on what works best for you. I would always recommend paper and pen. It's the best way to really kind of jot out your thoughts and your ideas. So I recommend, the old-fashioned way rather than using a word processor. But anyways, so let's get started. So I'm going to give you a little roadmap. Where are we going and what are we going to be doing today? So I'm going to talk a little bit about goals of this workshop. I want us to kind of agree on like, this is what we want to accomplish today. And this is where we want to go. And then the second part is, I know I am among a lot of scientists, so there needs to be some type of evidence base. And a lot of the things I'm going to talk about today is going to be evidence-based therapies. That's kind of my background as a therapist, as a counselor. I like to use more evidence-based type work. But right now, we're going to talk about some of the reasons why I'm doing what I'm doing and why we're talking about appreciation. One thing I do want to do is what I call instilling hope. Basically, it's just kind of like my mental plan. I want to let you guys know and be part of my mental plan of how I want to help this community because I want everyone to be involved, right? And I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. So I don't want you to come out, feeling hopeless. Oh my God, there's all this information, but what am I going to do with this information? And we're going to work together. We have a plan going somewhere with this. And then we're going to talk about coping with current cultures and basically your values and self-appreciation, right? If you're not feeling appreciated, I'm come up with some ideas on how we're going to cope with that, some homework on how to deal with not feeling appreciated. However, it's not going to be the cure-all. It's just going to be one of those, like, it's going to help you. It's going to make things a little bit better, but obviously making it completely better is going to rely on the last part, which is we need to end the cycle, right? Ending the cycle of the lack of appreciation. We want to bring appreciation a lot more positive work environment. We're going to look at gratitude and we're going to look at strengths. So that's kind of like us being proactive so that we can reduce kind of the mental health issues and creating a lot more appreciation in our field. All right. So again, warning, homework. Yes, I know. No one wants to do homework. It's not fun. We thought we passed that. But I mean, improving mental health doesn't mean we have to change the status quo. And if you're going to change the status quo, that means something has to change. That means we all have work to do. It can't just be one person. It does rely on all of us. So we're going to have to work together. We're going to be accountability buddies for each other. We're going to help each other out. What I do want to make sure is that the homework that I am going to provide, it's not going to be time consuming. It's nothing that's going to take you hours to do, days or anything. It's things that you can add into your day, maybe a minute, maybe a sentence. Nothing that's going to be gigantic. It's just focus on these small things because these small things will add to big things. The homework's going to follow these things called SMART goals. So if you guys never heard of SMART goals, it means it's specific, it's measurable, it's achievable, it's relevant, it's time-bound goals, right? I work with a lot of students. Whenever we come up with goals, be like, hey, what are you going to do better in the future? They're going to be like, oh, I want to study more, right? That's the homework they're trying to give themselves, but it has to be specific, right? What time are you going to go study? What blocks? Where are you going to go? What are you going to bring, right? So they have to be very specific. So that's what we're going to work on together and coming up with those type of homework for yourself so that we can make the community a better place, as well as things to help you and cope through some of the things that you may be going through. So again, you will be coming up with your own homework. So I'm not going to be giving you guys homework. I'm going to give you guys examples and ideas, but you have to come up with what works for you, right? Because you're best. I don't know you. So you have to figure out like, oh, this definitely works for me. This is what I can do. And that's what we want to shoot for. And then if you need, get an accountability buddy. That definitely helps, having somebody to keep you accountable. Hey, are you actually keeping up with what you said you're going to do? Right? Definitely adds that motivation. And then the last part is we do have to find a way to track our progress, right? It's one thing to say, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And then, and 6 months, where are you at? How you feel? Reflect, right? So we're going to have to do a little bit of that. So again, there's going to be some homework. It's only 4. It's 4 small ones. All right, so let's start with the goals. This is what what I'm hoping to accomplish today. So basically, what we're hoping to accomplish is basically create a work of environment of appreciation. We want to focus on how to cope with dealing with the lack of appreciation and how to promote that appreciation in the work environment, right? So it's kind of like 2 ways of how we're going to do this. Is basically we're going to look at ourselves and how to even appreciate ourselves, how to feel better about our own achievements and what we've accomplished, right? So appreciation of yourself is the first part, and the second goal is looking at appreciation for other people, right? And how to create that more positive work environment so that, if somebody is suffering, you can help them, right? So it's not just helping yourself, it's also helping everyone else. Because, we're all in this together and that's why we're all here. We want to help each other and we also want to help ourselves. All right. All right, so we're going to start with the mental health concerns. So we're going to start with a little bit on the science. It's going to go a little quick. But just kind of a very quick overview. Whenever we talk about mental health, we're just going to be talking about anxiety, depression, and stress. That's the primarily thing that we're going to focus on, mostly because that's the widespread issue. It's not very specific. Everyone definitely, or not everyone, but a lot of people have had some type of interaction with anxiety and depression and stress, right? Whenever we talk about the science of or doing any studies with this, we're talking about 2 primary measurements, the GAD-7 and the PHQ-9. In fact, you may have given this assessment through your own primary care doctor even in your own therapy. It's a very common one. The reason we use that is because we can compare results between studies. And it's also a very good assessment. So if you have questions about like, hey, how come we're not, talking about neurodiversity, OCD, all these, or addiction, all these other things, these are things that I will get to in the future. Neurodiversity is something that I'm very interested in working on, something I want to improve on, like the communication and integrating people of neurodiverse backgrounds and having people work together better, right? So that's in the future. But for today, we're just going to focus on the anxiety, depression, stress. So some of the studies that have come out, so this is more in the broader academic environment. So there has been shown that there's a mental health crisis, especially among the early career graduate students, postdocs. And so that has been shown, and this is pre-pandemic. I came in and I was like, hey, is this true of planetary science? Because, planetary science is my community. I did a study myself during graduate school. We found that the problem still does exist even in planetary science. And what we found is that it's much worse in the planetary science community than the general United States population. So I did run a survey last year. Unfortunately, I'm not running one this year, if you're wondering if there is one. But I did run one last year, and basically we want to determine what are contributing to people's anxiety, what's contributing to people's depression. And because of that study, it was what leading us to why I'm doing this workshop and focusing on appreciation. So here's kind of the prevalence of anxiety in planetary in 2022 and 2023. So the purple is 2022, the blue is 2023. And then the y-axis is the prevalence, or how many people are experiencing it. On the x-axis, I split people based on gender, ethnicity, LGBTQ, or sexual and gender orientation, as well as career stage. And we can see that, even in 2022, we're still coming off the pandemic. You can still see it's all high. And if you compare it to the red and the green lines, which is the general United States population, you can see that the early careers in our field have suffered the most, right? It does taper a little bit in the later careers. I don't know what the reasons are. That's something that's yet to be explored, but you can still see that we still kind of have a problem even compared to the United States population. And this is the same thing of depression. You can see that there's that problem that still exists, especially among early careers, as well as marginalized populations, which includes, again, people of color, people who belong in the LGBTQ plus community or identify with that community, and graduate students and postdocs, or young early career. So again, this is a problem that still exists in our field, and something that I'm hoping that we can all fix together. So here's some aspects to mentoring and advising. Some of the things that people have been saying that it's kind of like their interactions with their advisors. So among graduate students, those with anxiety and depression, they noted there's a lot of areas in their mentoring that needs to be improved. So you can see in this figure, there's like provides mentorship, provides ample support, positive emotional impact, asset to career, and feel valued by mentor. And the one that you can see that is the biggest difference, the one that where people with anxiety say they are not getting, is compared to people who said they are getting, is that feel valued by mentor, right? So a lot of those who are feeling that anxiety or depression, they're just not feeling valued, right? That lack of value, that lack of appreciation. So this is one of the reasons why I'm focusing on the valued and the appreciation. So that's something that we're going to work on today. But even when I did a study of planetary scientists, I noticed the same thing, right? So this is kind of the top contributors to anxiety among planetary scientists. So you can see some of the very top one is that feeling good enough or belonging, which is kind of sounds similar to imposter syndrome. But if you could just go 2 down, you can see that feeling, not feeling valued or appreciated by the community, right? So it's one of the top ones that's kind of driving a lot of people in their feelings with anxiety. Even those with depression, you can see that those in the planetary science, one of the big top contributors to their depression is, again, not feeling valued or appreciated, right? We want to feel like we belong. That's the whole sense of belonging. We want to be part of that community. So as you can see, this is something that needs, if we address this, we can really lower some of the anxiety and depression that we may be seeing. But again, you can see not feeling good enough and belonging is another big one. So that's hopefully something that I will be addressing in the near future. And then the most common contributor among graduate students, you can see that not feeling valued is like number 4, but you can see that like job instability, not feeling good enough, underpaid are some of the top ones. So again, it's just kind of keeps coming up, but it doesn't pop up with the postdocs as much. But that whole feeling not good enough or belonging, that imposter syndrome, is still pretty high. But with the work that we're going to be doing today, that can be addressed a little bit here. And then for soft money researchers, I didn't look at other mid-late careers, mostly because of sampling size issues. But again, you can see that that's kind of similar. Yeah, proposal writing and attempts to secure funding is a big one. But again, feeling not good enough, not feeling valued. Those are 2 ones that keep coming up consistently throughout my study, which I'm hoping to publish in the future. All right, so that's kind of the science side. So there's plenty to work on, as you can see from these graphs, but obviously my plan is not to solve them all at once. This is something that's going to take years of working together, and that's okay, right? We have time. We can do this one step at a time. Every small step is going to make huge changes. So trust that we can make these big changes even with the tiniest own behavioral change. So we're going to focus on the appreciation and not feeling valued, again, because we saw that that was kind of the major issue here. All right, so this is kind of my instilling hope. This is my solution, my mental plan that I have. I kind of compare what my plan for planetary science is similar to my plan working with individuals. So one of them is when you work with individual, there's a rapport building. So that's kind of similar to a community relationship. There's the treatment planning, which is what I'm doing now with the workshops and psychoeducation. And then there's always homework, right? And then that's what we're going to talk about with this community. But the homework is going to include that you guys are going to have to also help others as well. Talk more about that. And then finally, we're going to talk about changing behavior. When you help a client change their behavior or change the way they do things, same thing in the community, but except you're trying to help a lot of people change that, right? But that's called a culture change, right? So we got to work together. This is something that we are all in. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about this plan. So that change of culture, right? In therapy is common that improvement requires change, includes behavior change, includes cognitive change. So what happens when you are trying to change, the behavior of the entire community? It's a customs change, the way we do things, right? I mean, having a lot of friends in different aspects of academia, whether they're in physics or in marine biology or oceanography or geology, I've noticed that each group has their own culture, right? So, and all those cultures have their own customs, the way you teach people, the way you talk to people, the way you interact. These are all customs. This is all part of who we are, our identity as whether you're a planetary scientist or in other aspects of academia. So what we are going to have to do is we're going to have to change a little bit of that, right? Just the way we communicate is going to be a big one. So that is a huge culture change. So that means everyone has to commit to this change, right? It can't just be one person. It has to be as many of us as possible because we are trying to change how we do things. But most importantly, we have to be patient. We can't just rush it. It's not going to happen overnight. It's not going to happen over a year. It's going to take time. So be patient. It might take a generation in terms of like academic generation, but an academic generation is like 10 years maybe. So we can do it. We can do it. And we can make that happen. And then workshops and psychoeducation. So this is how we make positive changes I have to run these workshops, right? I give talks, I use counseling skills, I use everything that I've learned, everything from industrial organizational psychology to counseling psychology, and I try to bring these in and basically use what we know in science to change, right? So everything I'm going to be showing here is not based on some, just a belief. It's based on people who are actually working on making these changes. But in order to make these changes, we have to make policy changes, right? Talking to funding institutions, research institutions, um, but also changing, small changes in our conversations, our behaviors, our habits, right? So it's everything from everything large, institutional to the individual. But again, I just want to emphasize these small changes, I will guarantee you will make big outcomes, right? And that's something that is found in therapy as well, right? Even the smallest change can change a person and how they interact with others and how they live and how happy they are. So do not underestimate just these small, simple habit changes. Don't underestimate some of the small homeworks that we're going to do and how it can create these big changes that you may see in the next few years. And then doing homework, obviously it's important because you can't, if you don't change, then nothing changes, right? Something has to be changed. So it doesn't mean that you have to lead a group or a setting or time-consuming meetings or workshops. Again, that's not what I'm asking. I'm just asking for these small, like, behavioral changes. These small changes to your habits, to your thoughts. They're going to make large changes. So that means the homework can be just as simple as talking to a colleague, right? Or even a student. And and just the way you talk to them, or even encourage them to, like, hey, this is how we are going to do things in Planetary or in academia going forward. That could, that student may pick it up, have these new good habits, and then they're going to work with new students, and then they're going to pick up those new habits, and it's going to just cascade, right? So it all could be as simple as a simple conversation in your changes, and even affecting the entire planetary science, right? And then the importance of rapport. So rapport is probably the most important topic in counseling. When I work with students and when I work with clients, um, everything's about rapport. It's about that relationship that I have with them, right? If I don't have a good relationship with them, they won't believe me, they won't do their homework, they won't listen, they won't tell me about what's going on with them. It just goes nowhere, right? So in counseling, when we talk about one of the biggest variable, we're talking about rapport, that relationship. And as much as I want to get to know everybody in this field, I can't build relationships alone, right? I always told myself, I would love to publish a paper with every single person in the field. But obviously it's impossible, right? So how do we make that culture change then? Well, what we do know is that academia and in planetary science, we're all connected to each other, right? In some ways, either they're colleagues, we work in the same building, um, or whatever it is. Maybe you're on the same mission, right? So we're all interconnected. So that means as I teach you guys some of the things that we could do to make things better, hopefully you guys can, reach out to the people I can't reach out and help promote change there, right? So if we just do that, right, it's kind of that whole cascade of, like, oh my God, now we're finally reaching everybody. We can actually make a change, but we have to do it together. It can't be just me. It can't just be, 5 people. It does rely on all of us working together on this. Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit about your first homework. So if you guys have your pen or pencil ready, or a word processor, this homework is going to be more based on affecting others and influencing others, and kind of promoting this cultural change, right? So what I want you to do is kind of write down, how will you spread what you learned here to others to help this cultural change? And so the kind of an example, this kind of example that I would give to a student, basically, oh, okay, I will talk to 5 colleagues by the end of the year, and how are we going to create an environment of appreciation and encourage them to do so, right? So, like, literally coming up with a number and coming up with a time, right? By the end of the year, by the end of the semester, by, whatever works for you. Again, think about what works for you, and what your time is, and what you know is doable, that's what I want you to choose, right? I don't want you to choose something ambitious because, oh, I really like this and I want to make sure I do it. I want you to choose something that you know you can do. And the way I've been like to describe this is, um, think about all the changes that we can make. Europa Clipper is supposed to be launched this year, and it arrives in I think 2030, right? So think about how much we could, like, if you decide to ask 5 colleagues by the end of this year, and then those 5 colleagues ask another, do the same thing, another 5 the next year. Think how many people they would affect by the time Europa Clipper arrives to the Jupiter system, right? That's a lot of people. So this is your first homework. So I'm going to start the timer. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes to come up with something for your homework for yourself. If you want to take a break during this 5 minutes, go for it. But otherwise, I'm going to go on to the silent mode and I'll let you guys think. All right. Oh man, I love your guys' answers. These are great. Great job. This is awesome. All right. All right. So we hit the 5 minutes mark. If you guys are still having trouble, you can always come back to it. But let's move on. So we're going to start talking about some things that you can do to create that appreciation for yourself. So we're going to go into that a little bit. So kind of recognizing your own achievements and how to recognize them, right? And how to find them. All right. So being a scientist myself, I do understand. At most, we might celebrate our major achievements, whether they're publishing a paper, winning a grant, or passing a PhD defense. I mean, I have issues with myself. Even when I'm publishing a paper, I'm just like, thank God that's done. And then I kind of move on with my life and on to the next project. But these are obviously major achievements, right? These are huge ones that we need to remember to celebrate, whether it's like buying something for yourself or having, going out to food to something that that you don't eat a lot because it's expensive, but you love it, or it's super far and it's out of your way, right? We gotta celebrate these major ones, right? But we also can't forget about the little ones, right? We tend to forget the small ones, or we don't count the small ones, right? And they could be as simple as just testing a hypothesis, right? That's actually huge. If you guys don't if you think about it, it's actually humongous, right? You're like, hey, is this, are all these volcanoes, located in a certain region? Is there a relationship? And you're like, oh no. And then you just kind of move on. But that's actually, you discovered something, right? Because that usually comes up at a talk or a conference poster or wherever, right? Or even in review, right? These things are important and they are small achievements. And I know, writing a paper can be tough. So even writing a section, especially, when you're a graduate student, a postdoc, writing is still in that phase where it's just hard to just pump anything out, right? If you write a section, it's something that is worth it, celebrating. You did make some type of small achievement, right? Or even helping somebody, right? If you're a co-author or a collaborator and you're helping somebody else with their research, right? Those small things are achievements that we can't forget and that we need to remember to kind of like, congratulate ourselves and be proud of ourselves in making those things happen. So again, when an experiment or a model or observation invalidates a hypothesis, is that an achievement? Right? It definitely is. They really are, because you did figure something out, and it's part of exploring, right? I mean, if you talk to people who play a lot of video games, they love to do every side quest or check every corner, right? Do they hate them? Do they like get mad at themselves for doing it or regret it? No, they're just like, they enjoyed it. They loved it, right? It's kind of part of like the enjoying of exploration. We're going to talk a little bit about that. So let's put onto the chat. Let's talk about what are some small achievements that we forget to recognize and should recognize. So yeah, add them in the chat as we go, because that would be great. I'll help everyone come up with ideas of these small achievements that they have missed, right? So yeah, take a look at your own work. What are some achievements that you may have missed? So yeah, add your ideas to the chat. We're going to keep moving forward, but I don't want you guys to not put those things in. All right, so we may not get a lot of appreciation and recognition for our achievements, right, or from others, right? But again, these moments are very important, right? And so we can't just expect, people appreciating us and celebrating our achievements. We also have to celebrate them ourselves, right? Because even if they do, and we're not, appreciating or recognizing our own achievements, even when other people are doing it, it's still hard to accept those compliments, right? So we have to learn how to do this for ourselves. So there are a lot of ways to do it. I basically, some of the ideas that I have drawn from is basically what I do for myself. I have something called like a gratitude jar. Every time somebody does something for me, or I do something for myself, or I feel like nature has done something for me, right? Like that, thank God something happened. I'll put it on a piece of paper, I'll put it in a jar at the end of the month or end of the year, I'll read it, and oh my goodness, the flood of like appreciation feelings actually do really come true. So here are some ideas. And this is going to turn into a future homework that we're going to talk about when we get there. But I want you guys to kind of start forming ideas of how you're going to recognize your own achievements, right? So for example, you can write down on a piece of paper and review that of every achievement that you made as you go along for that month. And then at the end of the month, just read it all and be like, wow, look at all these things, even if they're small. That's, recognize yourself, recognize what you've accomplished, because you are always accomplished something. Um, and again, you can do it the way I did it. You can get a glass jar and you can put your achievements into that glass jar and then reread them after at the end of the month. And yeah, like you're gonna feel some stuff. You're gonna feel really good at the end. I think when I did it for a gratitude jar, I did that at the end of the year, and I think it literally put me in tears because it's just reminded me how much like I'm loved and how much people have done things for me and how much I care about myself. So it's just one of those things I do recommend. Think about, and so I want you guys to come up with something that will help you compliment yourself, how to recognize your own achievements. Um, all right, so you don't have to just rely on yourself. You can also have a social group, right? Find close friends, colleagues, strangers. Maybe you have an advisor that you don't get along with, or a colleague that you don't get along with. You don't have to constantly surround yourself or try to get their approval, right? There are so many people around you who are, very positive and want to help and want to compliment you for your achievements, or they can see things that you can't see, right? So think about like your social group and try to bring them together. So spend a few moments recognizing each other's achievements and appreciate each other routinely, right? Again, you don't have to, you could have it as simple as a group text, right? You can have a group text of all your closest friends in the field and just be like, hey guys, this is what I achieved. And then everyone will be like, yes, awesome, and then you guys can continuously share that with among each other, right? Kind of like help boost each other up and keep moving forward, right? Or you can organize something as small as like doing coffee on Friday, right? You can just talk and just unwind and talk about random stuff, but just include as simple of a conversation. Hey, how did this week go? What did you finish this week? Anything good? And recognizing that small achievements, right? You can just bring them up, right? So again, these doesn't have to be gigantic things. They could be as small as just these small, tiny conversations, or even as small as like a few sentences in that conversation, right? But if you want to go large, some people love to go large. You can create social groups, right? You can create meetings in your your own research group or your colleagues, or you can go with strangers and go on Reddit or Facebook, create a group and have just people talk about these small changes, these small or reaching these small goals, right? So a lot of ideas. I want you to look for the one that works for you. It does if creating a group for strangers to do this is not for you, don't do it. Maybe you just want one other person. That's fine. It doesn't have to be a group of 20 people. It could just be as a group as just 2 people, right? So figure out what works for you. And that's what's going to go into the second homework that I want you guys to think about. So how would you like to recognize your achievements? So I want you to come up with an idea. What would you like to celebrate? Or come up with an idea on how you would like to celebrate those small things, right? Again, self-achievement, having a support group, having close friends, and come up with ideas who those friends may be. So I want you to take 5 minutes, another 5 minutes to come up with your second homework. I want you to write and choose how to recognize your achievements, whether if you want to do it with recognizing yourself or having a group, or doing both. Obviously, I would always recommend, both. And then the second part to this homework, so first one is choosing how you're gonna do it. And the second part is coming up with the steps you need to do to accomplish the assignment, right? If you are getting a bunch of friends together, you can put together a group chat, right? So that's the step, right? I need to put together a group chat, and I'm going to talk to people and see if they're okay with it, of course. Consents are very important, people. So yeah, come up with that. I'll give you 5 minutes. I want you guys to share your ideas in the chat so that you can help, other people come up with ideas that may help. So again, 5 minutes starts now. All right, we're gonna move on to the next. So again, if you haven't come up with the answer, you can always you can work on it while we were going through, or you can just save it towards the end and come up with your ideas later. All right, so we're gonna keep moving forward. So we're gonna talk a little, oops, it's going. We're gonna talk about values a little bit. So what are values? So values are kind of life directions, right? So they're a direction, not a place. They're not an achievement. So when we talk about following your values, we're not talking about where you're going, right? Let's say you're in the middle of a desert or in the middle of a grass plains, and there's mountains out in far out, or a lake or a river, right? The value isn't making it to that mountain, right? It isn't oh, I get to finally get that degree. Values is basically where you're going, right? That direction. I'm going to go east, right? But are you ever going to reach east? If you keep going east, the answer is no, right? Because east is a direction, it's not a place. So values are basically verbs, right? They're not nouns, they're not objects, they're not goals, and they're not outcomes, right? You're not trying to get something, right? Rather like, oh, my value is to, finish these papers and have a million papers, right? That's an achievement, right? That's something that you want to get out of it. And that's an outcome, right? A value is something that is, as I'm going to give you some example, is something that you're trying to move towards, right? And the one thing I want to emphasize is that they're choices, your choices. They're not something that somebody have picked for you, right? If you want, like, for example, if you have a family member who's just like, they really want you to just help people, right? That becomes not your choice, right? That becomes somebody, you're taking on values that somebody has given to you, right? So to give you kind of an example that I have for values is back when I was doing my internship, I was working with a student and he loves painting cars, right? That's all he cares about. He just enjoys working on cars and painting cars, right? And I would ask him like, what is it about painting cars that you like, right? And he's just like, I just like it. And I just love painting cars. But the thing is, it's not the achievement. It's not about like, oh, I painted one car or I painted 5 cars, right? Sure, there is an achievement of like, I finish one car, I take a step back and I enjoy it, right? That's a small achievement, right? And those are important, but that's not his value, right? His value. So when I asked him like, what is about painting cars that you love? He's like, it just makes me happy. And I was like, well, why does it make you happy? He's like, I don't know, right? So that's how you find your values, is that you keep asking yourself until you hit the point of, I don't know, I just do it, right? So his value was literally just painting cars. It's what drove him, right? And he wanted to keep doing it, right? So that's a value, and he's doing something that he's passionate about, right? So that's something that we're going to talk about a little bit, and I want you guys to start thinking about what your values are, right? So here's some example of values. So my value is helping others, right? So that's kind of part of why I went into the counseling field. That's why I'm still in, wanted to do these workshops, because I love working with you guys. I love helping people in this field. It's one of my values, is helping others, right? Some other ideas for values is like, oh, loving my parents, right? There's no such thing as, oh, I've completed loving my parents. When you do something for your parents, right, it never ends. You're going to keep doing it because you love them, right? It's the loving, it's that verb, right? It's the direction. You're going to keep doing it because it's something that you value. Now, I brought 2 examples that might be relevant to some of you guys in the science field, right? You're valuing discovering nature, right? You can never fully discover nature. It's something that you just love doing, right? It's what drives you. It's the thing that you are moving towards, or exploring the universe, right? Again, you can't fully explore the universe. It's something that, that's driving you. That's why you do the things that you do, right? So I want you to, so we're going to think about this, is how to find our own values, right? And the analogy that we commonly use in one part of therapy is kind of imagine your funeral. I know it's kind of weird, it's morbid, end of life, right? But in reality, what we're going to be talking about is not the end of life, but the living, right? Your life, right? So imagine someone in your own funeral, and someone's giving you your eulogy. What would you want them to say, right? And usually when we do these things, we don't talk about all the achievements you made, right? We usually talk about who you were as a person, right? So kind of like, what did you stand for? So in this exercise, this is just the exercise, this isn't a homework. I want you to focus on both our science and career, right? So I want you to write your answer to what do you want to stand for in your work, right? When someone's giving you a eulogy, what do you want them to say? What do they say about you that stood about you about when it comes to work? And what difference do you want to make through your job? What type of learner do you want to be? So can be quite the intense exercise. This is not an easy exercise. This can be quite deep, right? So there might be some triggers. It's going to push you a little bit. But if it's too much, I want you to stop. Take a moment and just take care of yourself. You don't have to finish this exercise. Maybe you can come back to it in the future. But I want you to just, but if you are feeling it's pushing you too much, yeah, just take a break. Um, you may share whatever your values you have in the chat, but I don't expect anyone to. This one is very personal, right? This can be very personal. And so if you want to share, you may, but I'll give you guys 5 minutes to kind of write down your answers. Again, this is not a homework, this is more of an exercise to figure out what are your values, and what do you stand for when it comes to work. All right, I'll let the 5 minutes start now. All right, so we're about at 5 minutes. How did it go for everybody? You guys doing okay? All right, we're gonna move on to the next part. I'm gonna talk about kind of combining what we just talked about with values and achievements, right? So the beauty of values is that they provide direction, right? For example, for me, helping people is my direction, is one of my directions, right? I love helping others. That's what drives me. I just want to keep helping others. But the little achievements is what keeps me going, right? It's like being in a car, you're moving in that direction that you value. Hey, maybe you go a little bit, if I'm going east, right? Maybe I go a little bit northeast. Maybe I'll go a little bit southeast. Maybe I'll end up going straight north. Maybe I'll end up going west a little bit, right? But what's important is that you are making those values and moving it towards that direction. But what keeps you going, right? Well, it's the achievements, right? It's those little like markers on the road that or the fuel stations that are keeping you going, right? So the values tell you where you're going, but achievements is what helps you keep going, right? Because that's where I think a lot of people can get stuck. If you are going in a direction and no one's recognizing you or appreciating the work you are doing, how can you keep going in that direction if you don't have the fuel to keep going, right? So this is where we're going to have to combine the two: the values, where are we going, the achievements, the fuel to keep going. So how will you enjoy that journey, right? And the other part is becoming present and with your research, right? I know a lot of you guys, or your work in general, and I know a lot of you guys went into science because you love the idea of exploration and discovering. That's kind of part of your values, right? Those small achievements is what's going to keep you going, right? Whether it's, so if you keep waiting for that big publication, that big proposal, right, you may have removed some of your fuel stations to keep moving in that direction, and it may make it hard, right? So celebrating the small ones will keep you going. So the one thing to also remember is be in your research, right? Just kind of fall into it, right? Because if you guys probably remember your first internship or the first time you ever done a study, you just got super into it, right? And you got so into it that you lost track of time, right? And that's what we want to keep bringing up in your life and your activities, right? In positive psychology, we call that flow, right? When you're so deep into some work that you love that you just, you lose all sense of time because you're just so passionate about it. You're just so deep into it. That's called flow, and we want more of those, right? So that's kind of part of that journey, right? As you're going between achievements, is allowing you to be present with the work, not worrying about anything else that's happening, but just remembering, why are you doing this? And being captured by it. So, for example, you can use this as a way to kind of relook at some of the things that you're doing, right? So reimagine how your work is part of this journey. So, for example, if you're writing a manuscript, you're creating a map, right? It's kind of part of that journey. You're creating a map and you're helping fellow explorers and other colleagues of like where you're going, right? So all of this is part of your journey towards your values. And then those achievements, again, they're little fuel stations to keep you going. So putting these two are very important. All right, we're going to move on to the next part. So that was more of like the general coping with that lack of appreciation. We're going to move on to how to create a culture of appreciation, how to, make an environment where people are appreciating one another and promoting that appreciation. So as we saw, we need to create that culture of appreciation and valuing others, right? I showed you like that tends to be one of the top contributors to anxiety and depression. So we want people to create more of this environment. People need to feel like their work matters, right? Let's be honest. We all want to feel like we matter. We all want to make an impact, and we want to, and that we are a person and that we matter, right? So this kind of goes in this whole idea of sense of belonging, right? That we belong to a group. And studies have shown like what is the one key variable that really helps people live for a long time, right? Life longevity. Well, it's that sense of belonging, being part of a group, being social, right? So if we don't have this appreciation, we're kind of not helping people wanting to stay in the field or do their best work because they don't feel like they matter, right? So we need that appreciation. So we want to foster those relationships among collaborators and students and advisors and so on, right? So we need that sense of belonging. All right, so this is going to be a fun, another exercise, but it's going to turn into a homework as well. But we're going to do something what we call gratitude letter. This is a very popular type of exercise found in positive psychotherapy. So basically what I want you guys to do, and I want you to brainstorm and think of someone at work that has helped you or is currently helping you, whether it's in your classes or in your research, and that you have not been able to thank in the past, right? So I don't want you to pick people who are just close to you, right? Like some colleague that you talk to every day, because that might be a little too easy. You might be grateful for them all the time, but I want you to pick somebody that that you don't work with as frequently, right? Somebody that you do want to thank and they haven't been able to thank, right? Whether they were helping you with some experiment, right? Or somebody was helping you, get data, whatever it is. Pick that. I want you to brainstorm of somebody. So submit some of your ideas in the chat. So again, I don't want you guys to use names, but more on the relationship, mostly because I want you to think of how those relationship is influencing on who you're going to choose, right? I want people to think about like the different people that may be around them that they may have forgotten or just didn't think about. So add them in the chat with one reason why you chose them, or just brainstorm. You can do a list if you'd like. So this is going to be a 10-minute exercise. So this is going to be on a little bit on the longer side. Actually, I'm going to probably maybe about 5 minutes just because we're kind of running low on time. But take 5 minutes, construct your gratitude letter. I want you to write on a piece of paper or a word processor. Again, don't worry about grammar. Don't worry about the perfection. Just write down everything. And I want you to think about when you write this gratitude towards that letter, towards that to that person. I want you to think, what do they do for you? And how did they help you? And then what is it about what they did for you that was meaningful to or helpful for you. So again, we're just constructing a letter to that person that you have not been able to think in the past or currently. And I want you to just think about what they did and how they help you and what they did that was meaningful. So go for it. I'm going to give you guys 5 minutes, and then we're going to talk about the homework for this one. All right. All right, let's move on to, or I guess not moving on, but we're going to talk about this a little bit more. So I want you to reflect a little bit. I know some of you might not be done, but yeah, let's do a little bit of reflection. You can finish it later, maybe later today or sometime this week. But I want you to think about how did you feel when you wrote that letter? And what was the easiest part to write? What was the toughest part? You can share those in the chat. Just because of the sake of time, we're gonna just keep moving, but you are always welcome to share these things in the chat. All right. So we're gonna do a little bit of homework number 3. This one is a little bit easier in sense of me presenting it, maybe not actually doing it. But yeah, this is an opportunity to share your letter with the person by reading it out loud, if possible. Maybe you guys are very far apart from each other, or if it's somebody that has passed, that's okay too. But if you can get to this person and tell them, that would be great. Read it out loud, or email it to them. So when you do this homework, I want you guys to think about, well, how did the person react to your expression of gratitude? Were they affected by the reaction? How long did the feeling last after you presented your letter? Do you recall the experience the days that followed the reading of the letter? If so, how did this recollection affect your mood? So yeah, I want you to do, if you can, find that person, read it to them, or email it to them, and just see how it made you feel and how it made them feel. Because we want to capture those good feelings and we want to keep continuing, right? I want you guys to be like, oh my God, I feel good about myself. Maybe I should do this more often. All right, so we're going to go a little bit of the last part of this workshop. So showing appreciation, right? So obviously you don't have to do a letter every time to each person that you want to show appreciation to. It can be as offered as simple as a sentence, right? But it can't just be a simple sentence. It can be like, thanks for finishing that part of the paper and then moving on, right? You need to give the reason why it was, why you're grateful about it, right? So adding the reason for the appreciation actually adds sincerity, right? It helps them understand, why does it help you? It's something that you thought about. It's not just a simple like gesture. It's something that actually has meaning to it by adding that reason why you're showing that appreciation, right? So thank you for cleaning the laboratory. It helps all of us not to stress about cleaning before starting our experiment, right? As we know, if you have dirty dishes before you start cooking, it's not fun to clean those dishes first and then start cleaning, right? So again, this adds that sincerity. It's not just a simple appreciation. It adds that the reason why you thought about it and how it helps you, and right? Because at the end of the day, friendship and appreciation is about give and take, right? This is something we talk about in developmental psychology. A lot of kids, as they're growing up, they're learning that negotiation of give and take, right? It's very important. You can't just give and you can't just take. It needs to be both. So by showing that appreciation, right, you're giving them appreciation, and then you're kind of by taking what they did for you back by saying, this is how you helped me, right? So that's a equal give and take. So receiving that appreciation, tell them how you feel, right? If somebody does something for you and they're just like, thanks, right? That doesn't feel really grateful or showing appreciation, right? You have to kind of add, how you felt about it, right? So say a full thank you, right? So an example is, of course, I'm glad I can help people feel at ease before starting an experiment, right? It shows that sincerity back, right? When someone shows appreciation, you're showing that that you are taking that compliment and you're taking it at full value, right? So not just show appreciation, show that you are receiving it as well, because you want people to keep appreciating others, and that people are actually, this is kind of weird, appreciating it. All right, recognizing strengths. So we're going to deviate a little bit, but like classwork and in science, we are driven to always get it right, be precise, right? Everything we have to do is avoid mistakes, right? Deficits, weaknesses, right? And that can become a problem, right? Because we don't want to be criticized. I mean, think about how we are in science. We were taught that, you know, when you review a paper, you have to find the things that are wrong to make it more perfect. But then now people are just focused on just not messing up, not screwing up, not doing anything wrong, right? So let's appreciate. So one thing that we can start introducing now is appreciating and recognizing people's strengths. Because when you recognize people's strengths, they can use those strengths to help on the areas that they need to develop, right? So whenever someone recognizing someone's strengths, when you can basically tell them use that strength more often, it may support areas that you need to work on better, right? And here's an example, right? You did a great job writing a thorough introduction section, and as an associate editor for a JGR and reviewing a million papers, I've seen a lot of people who write great introductions, right? So this example is not something that's made up. It's something how I've actually what I've seen. So you did a great job writing a thorough introduction section. Let's do it again in the discussion and figure out how to integrate the background in your results, right? Because the introduction is a lot of background, right? And the discussion has background, but it's the integration of their new results, right? So you want them to be like, you did a great job doing this part. You can do it again. We're just going to work on, you know, adding this little part together, right? So you're recognizing that strength. So often we tell people what they did wrong, but we also need to tell them what they did right? Because in order for people, so we can't just focus on, you know, what's wrong with people. They're not going to grow if you just focus on those things, but they can grow if you tell them how to use their other characteristics to make you know, something into a strength, right? Growing new strengths. So we're all about growth, right? That's what we want to focus on when we work together, when we work with others, whether you're on a mission team together, whether it's a colleague, or whether you're working with a student or you're working with a postdoc. We're here to help grow them and grow all their strengths, right? And use the strengths that they already have. And the other part is complementing the process, right? So one thing that we do get a little stuck on in science is we do only compliment and provide positive comments after an achievement, right? Hey, great job winning those grants, or great job, you know, getting that big paper done, right? But the problem is when you only compliment after big achievements, you can make people feel like failures when they don't achieve something, right? If they get a proposal declined and no one says anything, it just feels like a failure, right? So because you only compliment achievements, right? It's like telling them you only get compliments, you only get my love when you succeed, right? And that's not what the environment that we want to build, right? So we need to complement the process. So although you didn't get the grant, you did a great job taking the time to write and put together a high quality proposal, right? You're not complimenting the outcome, you're complimenting the process, right? So what we need to do is include more of that compliments of the process, rather than just only solely complimenting the achievement or the results, right? Because when you compliment the process, that means you're going to keep doing the process more. You tell them, hey, even though you didn't get the proposal, you did a great job writing it. They'll be like, oh, I got a compliment for doing, you know, putting hard work into it and putting time into it and putting quality into it. They're going to keep doing it, right? So I'm not saying don't compliment the achievement. I want you to compliment both the achievement and compliment the process of the work. All right, so this is the last homework that you guys are going to put together for yourself. So we reviewed showing appreciation for others and how to appreciate, recognizing strengths, and complementing the process. So I want you guys to take 5 minutes. This is the last 5 minutes right before we finish. So that will take us near the end. Come up with homework that you would give to yourself to integrate more of these changes in communication, right? Whether it's showing appreciation, recognizing strengths, complementing the process, or all three of them. So here's an example. I'll make sure to show appreciation to someone at work at least 3 times a week, right? Or every time I review a paper, I need to recognize at least 2 strengths. So come up with some homework that you can give yourself in improving your communication. I'll give you guys 5 minutes to brainstorm, and then we're going to finish up. All right, let's talk about the last few slides. I think it's the last 2, actually. All right, so let's do a little summary of the homeworks. So I gave you guys 4 homeworks, just kind of a recap. So how will you talk to others to promote a positive work environment? How many people will you teach what you've learned here today, right? So That's obviously something that I probably should write at the end, but I want to put in the beginning because I want us to, think about it and as a way of creating hope that we can create a better planetary science community or academic community. Um, how will you recognize your small achievements? Reading your gratitude letter to the person that it was for, and how will you increase your appreciation and recognition of other people's strengths? So that was your 4 homework. So you should have 4 on your piece of paper or your word processor. Um, and the thing I want you to think about, as this is I think my last slide, is I want you to come up with your deadline. When do you want to finish these things, right? When do these have to happen? By the end of the year, by the end of the school year, the semester, and who's going to keep you accountable, right? You can probably pick people in this room if you'd like, or if you have a colleague or a friend that you want to choose, you can choose them. And then how will you track your progress, right? So even though you said, hey, I'm going to do 2 compliments of people's papers per year, um, how are you going to track that, and what day will you use to kind of reflect on how you did? Otherwise, that is all I have. Thank you, everybody. And yeah, if you have any questions, I'll be around afterwards for a little bit. Thanks.
Yay! Thank you, David. Please join me in giving David a virtual round of applause. This was fantastic. So we are done now with the official program. We're right at 90 minutes. Well done. I will say David and myself have a little time. We're going to stick around. If there are any questions, topics of discussion that people want to chat about, we can stay on for about 15 more minutes. And then I will say there throughout the chat, just a couple of updates. So a reminder, you're going to be taken to a survey when you leave. Please fill it out. Your input's really valuable. And you'll be getting an email in a couple of days with a link back to the LPI website, which is where we're going to post the recording. We'll post the slides that will be available for download. And I'll also post an anonymized version of the chat responses so you can look back at the great input that your peers had. Okay, so there are a couple of questions in the chat. David, are you able to see those?
Oh yeah. Just gotta dig through them.
Yeah, so I can see, it looks like the first one that came in was from BB. It said, David, did you use a 5D model of application?
um, Probably not. But no, I definitely it's one of my kind of go-to. Appreciation is definitely a huge part. So in the counseling and therapy worlds, there's a lot of way to approach and working with a person. One of my big ones that's now becoming a big therapy that's being used by other people is called positive psychology and positive psychotherapy. So that's where I have a lot of, I really love the appreciation. It's kind of, yeah, it's becoming huge in a lot of different parts of psychology. So that's what I'm using. I'm using the recent stuff. Oh, thank you. I appreciate everyone's compliments. I did read the chats periodically as I went on, but yeah, no, I I appreciate everyone's appreciation. Oh man, it's so meta.
There was one question in the Q&A, but I got that one. Are there any other questions? While you think of those, I will also say if you're not signed up for any of LPI's newsletters, sign up. This is where you'll receive other announcements for our next professional development sessions and, the next awesome paper that David puts out. We'll highlight it there, things like that. So check out the website if you haven't already.
Oh, I saw a question in the Q&A. So the question is, do you have tips on feeling underappreciated, how feeling underappreciated can manifest? Some people have trouble naming feelings, especially something nuanced like underappreciated. And it would be helpful to have a map to find it in a tangle of other feelings. That's a good question. I think if someone asks me like where underappreciation comes from a lot, I think it just comes from idea of sense of belonging. I think it's just, wanting to feel wanted, right? Wanting part of a group. I think, something that we've all experienced a lot in, whether it's middle school, high school, elementary school. So I think it kind of comes from not feeling like you belong to a certain group. And of course, being a feeling unappreciated, I think it's not I wouldn't call it a true emotion, but but the feeling of underappreciation creates a lot of different emotions.